Hey everyone, it's Kim. I just wanted to check in with you to let you know that the sound quality might not be the best on the upcoming episode, and we're really sorry about that. We are working out the kinks currently and trying to make sure that future episodes sound so much better. Also, if you ever hear my dog in the background, I'm really sorry about that. She's just passionate about life and this podcast. Talk to you soon.
Confidently controversial. Confidently controversial. Confidently controversial.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning, afternoon, evening.
We don't know what time it is, where you are in the world.
I'm only singing like that this morning because she's wearing red bandana a la Willie Nelson, and she's feeling herself.
I have a look today, but it's because I'm painting my house. I'm trying to paint my house. I've been trying to paint my house since the fall, and the weather is not, I don't know, it's not agreeing, but I'm excited to paint my house today. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Emily.
How are you?
I'm okay.
How's your week been?
It is pretty good. Pretty good. You know, just living my best life, as the kids say.
Do they say that?
I don't know. I don't listen when they do.
Oh, you do. You're kind to children and animals. That's why I love you and you're my best friend. Because you care about those things.
That's right.
So here we are. It's another episode of Confidently Controversial. Yes, it is.
Yes.
So this is the show where we rewatch movies from our youth and talk about how they may have impacted us in our life, and also think about why on earth we were allowed to watch these movies when we were children.
Good job.
Yes, thank you.
That's what
concise. This is concise. We've been remiss because we have not officially thanked someone, an early lover and supporter of the podcast, which is Mr. Mark Cantone, who wrote our theme song.
Our amazing theme song that I can't get unstuck from my head.
I do love it. And Mark is somebody who I went to college with. At the University of Arts in Philadelphia. Shout out UArts. And Mark is an amazing guy. And he's been very supportive of just this idea and doing this in general. So I really appreciate all of his support, not just in the song, but also just kind of in the encouragement with the whole thing. Because I think doing something like this is sometimes hard to take that first step. And, you know, we've been best friends for a long time. And I feel like over those years, we come up with ideas and we talk a lot and we, big plans, but sometimes it's hard to execute on those things. And I think a lot of people go through that. So I feel very proud of us for, having an idea and doing it and sticking to it and holding ourselves accountable for it. So yay, no matter how much we were impacted by these crazy movies when we were young, we obviously didn't turn out too bad.
Because we did this thing.
Just because we did this thing. Nothing else in our lives. Nothing else in our lives. The people we love and the other things we've accomplished in our lives mean nothing.
Sure.
This means everything.
Well, I was thinking, too, this week of how lucky we are to have so many creative, talented people in our lives.
Yeah.
Too, because I think that that's what has made this possible, is that we have a lot of people who are really creative forces out in the world and are doing so many cool things, and they have been kind enough to help us do cool things too.
Yes.
So thank you to everybody who has been supportive or helped us in one way or the other.
Yeah, and shared kind words about the podcast, helped us. I think my brother who's helped out with so many things, and we love all of you guys and we appreciate all of you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Enough with this. Enough with this sentimental stuff. We got to talk about a movie today.
I'm excited. It's your turn to choose the movie this week. I have no idea what you're going to pick.
And I don't know so last episode, I hadn't watched the movie.
Right.
And which was interesting to kind of come into it and watch this movie that was very impactful to you, which was St. Elmo's Fire.
Sure.
And so this movie, I sincerely don't know if you've watched this movie before. If you didn't, I don't know. I guess I would be surprised. So we're just going to go ahead and get into it because this movie very impactful on a young Emily for sure, like in major ways that we're going to get into now. So I'm going to start this off by reading a quote that I found of a review of this movie. Okay. Because as I started researching this movie, what I found was this movie was widely panned.
As most of the movies that we like were.
This is a roundly panned movie. However, I did find a lovely review by someone who pushed against the grain with this, and that was Mr. Roger Ebert. Wrote this about it. I'm going to take out just anything that would say the name of the movie and just read you what he wrote and see if this sparks anything. Okay. This is a terrific movie for kids and teenagers. It's a melancholy fact of the times that we live in that any movie of even moderate ambition is supposed to become a blockbuster, and that, quote, family movies, with few exceptions, are inane, innocent, and boring. But this movie is not inane. It's sometimes wickedly knowing and is only periodically boring.
Only periodically, as I praise.
It strikes a note of quiet desperation that appeals to the teenager in us all. When this person's character has shrunk to 24 inches in height and is desperately screaming for help because she's about to be flushed down the garbage disposal unit, who among us cannot say he has felt exactly the same way?
Okay.
Do you know nothing?
Unless it's Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which I don't think it is.
This movie came out in 1981. So we were little.
Very little.
And it's rated PG.
Uh-huh.
And I was surprised to read this because in my recollection, this was not a kid's movie. It was kind of like a coup that we were able to watch it. I remember my parents kind of deliberating about it and being like, I don't know if they can watch this. And then when we did, I felt like it was kind of like, felt a little big time for being able to watch this movie when I was very little.
Okay.
And
you were you think you were 4.
I don't think I was 4 or 5. I think this movie was on TV a lot when we were kids.
Okay.
So I think that's how I saw it.
Okay.
But it was that's why I'm going to be surprised if you've never seen it.
Okay.
Which is always possible.
Yeah.
Because, So this movie is the 1981 classic, The Incredible Shrinking Woman.
I've never seen this.
You've never seen this?
No.
Okay.
Who's in it?
Lily Tomlin. This was a Lily Tomlin vehicle.
Okay.
So Lily Tomlin, famous for a lot of different reasons. She was on Laugh-In. She was a stand-up comedian. Very, very talented and highly regarded. So this movie was actually written by her then partner, now wife, who kind of wrote this as a vehicle for her for some of the characters that she would do.
Okay.
So if you think, like, she used to do a character where she was like a switchboard operator. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Do you remember, did you watch any of her stand-up things?
Oh, I know she did. I remember when she was in that giant chair.
Right.
And she pretended to be like a little kid.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And I think that character is in this. I don't remember it, but I kind of do. So again, this is a PG movie. And you know what's very weird about this? And I did not know this until I started looking at it. So last week we watched St. Elmo's Fire, directed by Joel Schumacher, as is this movie. This was his first movie that he ever did.
Really?
Yes.
How about that?
I also found out from looking at, it's funny because I didn't put the 2 and 2 together until I started looking at, so I'm like, Joel Schumacher, that name's very familiar because the information does not stay in my brain for very long, really obviously. So I'm like, this name sounds very familiar. Let me look at some of his work. So I'm like, Lost Boys. I feel like we just talked about this. And then I saw St. Elmo's Fire. But I also found that he directed the NXS video, Devil Inside.
Okay.
Which took me down a whole other pathway for a little while where I was watching NXS videos because I had to see Devil Inside. Not a great video. He's wearing like Michael Hutchins, who's the lead singer who passed away, kind of famously. He's wearing like a turtleneck and a jacket in this, and they're playing in like a bar. It's not great. If you've never seen an NXS,
black and white?
No, but it's kind of like, it's like very vivid color.
Okay.
It's kind of like this seedy thing. It's not a good video. Like, I feel like NXS had some great videos, especially from that album. So I was like, all right, if we're going to talk about NXS even briefly, I got to recommend to the kids what's the best NXS video to go back and look at. So then I was looking at some other ones, and he did go through some kind of weird suit thing like very 90s suit singing
Uh-huh.
stuff. But if you want to watch a great video, I would say Don't Change when they're very young. Like, don't change the world, don't change a thing. And they're very young and, you know, Australian awesome.
What's the one where they have like the cards where they flip the cards?
Mediate, try not to hate it, and love is fate.
Wow, you're really big NXS.
Were you not into the?
I
Were you not into the NXS?
I was into the NXS.
NXS was
But,
also
not to the level you were, clearly.
No, it was. We were very into it. So, okay, back to the movie. That was just a little. You know, we have to talk about any opportunity I have to talk about NXS. I'm going to take it. This movie had a $10 million budget. It grossed $20 million, but like I said before, it was kind of seen as a big flop.
Yeah.
And people didn't, you know, kind of said bad things about it. So it was Lily Tomlin, also Charles Grodin,
Okay.
who is very, very funny.
Yes, I like Charles
I
Grodin.
love Charles Grodin so much.
Of Beethoven fame.
Of the Beethoven, of Great Muppet Caper
Yeah.
fame. He's of Midnight Run fame. Like, he's very, you know, if you don't know who he is by the name, I feel like people would know him by just seeing him. So John Landis was supposed to, I feel like these directors are going to become, we're just going to get to know these directors over time. So John Landis was originally supposed to direct this movie. For some reason, he was dropped out of it, but he ended up doing American Werewolf in London instead.
Okay.
So probably better for him in the long run. John Landis, connection back to Twilight Zone episode.
Yes.
Listen to that one if you want to learn a little bit more about him. So we talked about, this came out right after 9 to 5.
Okay.
So 9 to 5, huge Lily Tomlin movie with, she's in that show on Netflix they're still working together.
She's still in movies too, a lot.
Yeah, they were just in that 80 for Brady.
Who's they?
Like Lily Tomlin and, was it Jane
Jane
Fonda in
Fonda?
it too?
Okay, yeah.
Sally Field.
Yeah.
They just got, you know, all the actresses of a certain age and were like, be in this movie. They're like, all right.
Good for them.
Good for them. Yeah, I'm happy about that. I'm happy. This book was based off of, this movie was based off of a book called The Incredible Shrinking Man. There was another movie that was The Incredible Shrinking Man. The guy who wrote that, Richard Matheson, hated this movie, which I, you know, I think it's because it's misogyny, but it might not be. It might just be like a really bad movie that I don't remember in that way. There's some other, you know, great little tidbits about this movie. You're going to see in this Henry Gibson from The Burbs fame. Okay. He was also in Laugh-In.
Okay.
You'll recognize him. He's the doctor in The Burbs.
Yeah.
There's a giant shopping cart prop in this movie.
Okay.
That was later used in the Jackass movies. The same shopping cart.
The same.
The very same.
Oh,
the very same. So, you know, Ned Beatty is also in this movie. So, yeah. Ned Beatty. I read that Ned Beatty and Charles Grodin died about a month apart from each other back in 2021.
No.
And I actually have a pretty funny, not funny, but weird, like the day Charles Grodin died, I was having a colonoscopy.
Okay.
And you know, like when you're getting put under,
Yes.
and like I like to try and fight it. I don't know why.
Okay.
Because I have problems.
Because you want to be awake during something like that?
No, I just want to I want to know the moment it goes off. Like I like the idea of like being put under and then all of a sudden you're awake is kind of fascinating to me. So the last thing I thought of, I didn't know he had died yet, but the last thing I thought of before I went out was him singing to Miss Piggy in The Great Muppet Caper.
And then you woke up.
And then I woke up, and later that day,
Wake up. Wake up. We have to tell you something important.
What? They're like, you interrupted my colonoscopy for what? This must be important. I'm like, yes, Charles Grodin died. I was like, oh, I'm so glad you woke me. But yeah, I thought that was later in the day. And I was like, I just thought him. So, you know, I don't know.
Is that a good story?
Is it a good story? It's a good story to me. All right, so let's talk about, since you're not going to be, do you remember this movie in the zeitgeist at all?
I don't think so. No, I really don't remember much about it. I don't know. I feel like whenever you bring these new movies, I'm just like, oh, a new movie. Very comfortable in my standby movies and not to watch something new.
So I have a feeling. So you're the eldest in your family.
I am.
I have an older sister. I have a feeling that that was probably why
Yes.
you watched this.
Mhm.
Maybe a little, whereas it may have passed you by, you being a little too young.
Right.
So, this movie, I recall it like scaring me a little bit. And that's why, again, I was really surprised to read that it was a kid's, like everything I read about it was like, it's a kid's movie, it's a family movie. And in my recollection of it, it's a little bit like sci-fi scary.
So when is the last time you watched this movie?
I was little.
Okay.
I was very little.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it could be total crap.
It could be total crap. I don't know. But there's something, it's funny. I told my brother and sister that this was the movie that we were doing.
Yes.
And my brother was instantly like, oh my God, I was just singing, there's like a jingle in that movie. And he's like, I was just singing the jingle from that movie. So my brother must have watched it too. And he's even younger
Right.
than me.
Okay.
So I feel like this movie was around. I don't know if we taped it and we would watch it a lot.
Seems like something you would have on VHS.
This is the movie where I learned the song, Oh, I Wish I Were a Little Bar of Soap. Oh, I wish I were a little bar of soap.
We grew up at the same time, but we lived totally different childhoods. I have no idea what you're talking about.
And slidey over someone tiny. Oh, I wish I were a little bar of soap.
Tiny.
Yeah, it's tiny. That's why I said this movie was bad. This movie's bad. Like, it's like, and I also feel like I remember it being a lot about her relationship with Charles Grodin. There was something there. So like, again, I feel like this was not a kid's movie. So it's kind of weird. It's also, like I said, a little bit scary. And I was trying to think about like, why was this movie scary to me? And it's like, she's shrinking to nothing in it. And that was scary to me, but it also like sparked a lot of interest for a little kid like me, because I feel like, like when you're younger, you're like, at least I would do this a lot. You like lay in bed, like before you go to sleep, and you think of like little stories in your head. Like, would you do that when you were a kid?
Yeah.
So a lot of the stories that I would think about had to do with shrinking.
Okay. And what you would do?
Like what I would do, and it was like being in a plight and having to like fight against people. And sometimes I would be like, usually it would be like I would shrink down and maybe like somebody else, like a friend from school or like boy I had a crush on would shrink down as well. And then we would have to like fight against the powers of injustice. But it gave me like a weird feeling.
Okay. Well,
you're so not enthused about this. But yeah,
it's okay. I'm excited. Let's watch it. Let's find out how terrible this movie is and see what happens.
Yeah, maybe it'll be interesting to see it. Well, it's funny because when we watched St. Elmo's Fire and I hadn't seen it, you were like, oh my God, I love this movie. And I was like, I don't know about this movie. This movie, I don't know that I love this movie.
Okay.
So we could both come out of this hating the whole thing. We could both watch this movie and be like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. There's this part of me.
I hope that's the case.
I hope that's the case too. There's a part of me because as I was doing the research, like I went to Rotten Tomatoes and it doesn't bode well on Rotten Tomatoes. All of these people, most of the people who comment on that are like these dudes, and this movie is supposed to be like a very feminist movie. Like I saw that word coming through a lot with it.
Okay.
I did like the one that was like a good movie quote about it, aside from our Roger Ebert, was someone named Larry Vitaco.
Okay.
From the Philadelphia Gay News.
Okay.
Who says, very amazing, slightly philosophical comedy.
Very amazing.
Very amusing. Sorry, not amazing. It's not amazing. Okay. It's very amusing, slightly philosophical. I learned something today, Kim.
Excellent.
So I'm interested in watching this with you.
I am as well.
Revisiting my childhood a little bit. And then you're going to think bad things about me.
Never. Yeah. Never could I. Never would I.
You might. I mean, I'm just saying. You might. All right. Well, then let's go find out how we can watch this movie. Let's do it. All right. Goodbye.
Controversial. Confidently controversial.
Oh my God, Kim.
So, even though Oh,
I feel okay. That's where I want to start.
okay.
I watched this movie as a child.
Yes.
And per the quote earlier from Roger Ebert, this was a children's movie. I did not believe this was a comedy.
No, I think it was a critique on like American capitalism. Right. Yeah. Okay.
Children's movie from the for teenagers.
It was meant to be a kids movie.
It's like the main. I don't know. Like in all the things, it's like for teenagers and kids. So it's like maybe it wasn't seen as like a serious movie for adults. So they kind of put it in a bucket of teenagers watching this movie, where it's like, well, who's going to watch this movie?
Well,
I guess some kids.
So I assume when it was written, the thought was that whoever wrote it was like, we're going to make this great critique on consumerism and like all of the product additives and how we're just getting further and further away.
Oh, this movie had something to say.
No, it did. And it said it.
It said it. Said it a lot.
Yeah. So do you want to give an
overview of the movie? Okay.
Of the movie? Because as we found out, I think you're the only one that's watched this movie.
And my brother and my sister.
And your brother and sister.
Okay. So this movie is about a woman named Pat Kramer, who is kind of suburban housewife. She has 2 children. Her husband is in advertising. They live in a lovely little suburb, in anywhere America. And she's kind of, struggling with just being your regular old mom that nobody really listens to anything she has to say. So the husband is in advertising, and he's like gets to name all these products, and that's something. So he's always bringing home these new products, and she tests all these things. And you have a neighbor who's bringing all these chemically products, like they talk about hairsprays and glue and feminine hygiene spray, which I guess. People were just spraying it on their stuff back in the 80s, spray this down there. It'll be magical. So it's kind of implying that she's using all these products. So she starts to shrink all of a sudden. And because she uses all these things, and because she had like this perfume dumped on her. So you kind of get this sense that like she uses all of these chemically products, and now she's starting to shrink. And then that becomes confirmed when they start doing all these tests that yes, it's these products that are making her shrink. And, you see her getting smaller and smaller. And as she's getting smaller and smaller, she's kind of getting more famous because that would be a pretty big deal if somebody just started to shrink. But it's this thing of like, we don't want to tell anyone. And then you see that there's this evil powers that are behind all these products. They're called the Illuminati, but they actually call themselves the Organization for World Management. Right. So they're kind of behind all this. And they don't first, it's like, well, we don't want her to say that it's these products that are making her shrink. But then you find they have an even more sinister plot that they are going to try and get her blood and figure out, like, make a serum that will make the world shrink while the super powerful remain big. So then they, hijinks ensue. Not funny hijinks, more like a little terrifying hijinks.
Yeah.
And then she ends up in like a science lab. The family thinks she's dead. And she ends up, then she escapes with the help of a gorilla. And
as you do.
And she tells the world that it's these products that are doing this, and then she dies and she becomes like a global hero. And then in the end, it ends up that her tiny little body landed in some chemicals that made her grow big. And the very end is like she's growing even bigger. She's going to be a giant. Pat's back, baby.
Cut to credits.
Cut to credits. So that's the movie. That's the movie in a nutshell. Lady shrinks because of, sinister stuff. And then,
Good job.
Yes. So, it's not a comedy. Is this movie funny? I don't think so.
No, it's not funny. I mean, there's some Definitely. There's some strong comedic work by a character that comes in at the end.
Yes.
Where he does some great physical
the
comedy.
Great Mark Blankfield.
Yes, shout out Mark.
Tomorrow. Shout out to you. Also, I think we need to shout out the Miss Concepcion.
Oh, yes. Who is their maid. The couple and their 2 children. They have this maid.
Who doesn't speak English.
Right.
Which we see this again in the 80s. A lot of Spanish-speaking maids.
Housekeepers. Yeah. Goonies for one.
Goonies for one. There's a lot of things in this movie that I feel like I've seen in other things. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I don't like, this, the non-English speaking maid, I don't think is the first thing in this movie. But so they're doing like this satire on, suburban life and in the suburbs, and everyone wears these, it's highly like, the colors in it are
it's very stylized.
It's very stylized. It's all pastel, which they do in Edward Scissorhands to satire
the neighborhood
too.
The suburbs.
It's
called Tasty Meadows is the name of the town they live in. And and her kitchen's pink, but then everybody in the neighborhood is wearing
wearing pink
lights. Even the husband has on like a light green suit.
Yes, the 3-piece polyester suits that they are wearing in this are top notch. Yeah, everyone wears like peaches and pinks and light blue. It's very Easter egg colors everywhere. But again, like that's interesting that comes back into like that Edward Scissorhands is like that as well, which was many years. That was like in the 90s or something.
Right, but that was even portraying. I mean, I feel like this was set in modern times when it was made, so it was set in the 80s, right?
Right. Did things look like that in the 80s?
No, but Edward Scissorhands is present day too, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, never mind that.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
I thought that, like I was saying before, my recollection of this movie was it scared me as a kid a little bit. Like, and I can kind of see why.
Well, I think it was that too.
It was. It's like your mom disappeared. Like those poor kids, and the kids were okay. Yeah, scary. Mom's going away. Those kids, bad.
They were really bad.
But I like all these little things in that movie that I remember, like the exploding gum in their mouths and the mom singing the song. And they were just like these really bad kids who maybe that's why my parents didn't want me to watch it. I mean,
but I think that, I do think that it was meant to scare you and to like, and if it was speaking to an audience that was adult, I think that it was meaning to scare you into thinking twice about what you're putting in your mouth, what you're eating, what you're drinking, what you're spraying on your body, what you're using to clean your house, all of this stuff. Like, I definitely think that was what this strong message was of this film, was really to give a second thought to what we've become as a country and the things we allow to happen to our products and our food.
Well, there's that part of it, which, truth. But I also feel like there's this weird conspiracy theory thing with it too.
Right.
Of the world is a scary place full of liars and schemers and don't trust anyone because the people who are making your products know they're bad, which, I guess we came to see later on with all the stuff with the tobacco things. So that was it. But then even behind, you think that, the Ned Beatty character is the evil guy with all these things, but then you've come to find out that really there's these like this small group of people pulling the strings in the background, and science is involved, so science is evil.
Right, and I also think that there's something to be said, too. So their idea is to take this woman's blood and give it to everyone.
To put it in the water supply.
To put it in the water supply so that everyone gets small and some people stay big. And I feel like it's kind of like a commentary. I wrote a commentary on the wealth gap. Like because these people just keep getting bigger and bigger and earning all this money, and there's these people that are millionaires and billionaires, and then you have the rest of the people who are small and don't have much money.
You know what I'm going to say about that? Tale as old as time. It's because it's very like on the nose, in terms of what they're trying to say. And there's like another message in there too, where it's not just for people or, the really rich and the poor, but it's also because she's a woman. So there is like a feminist message in there where no one listens to her. Like even these people in power, like they can't remember her name. Like she's meaningless to them. She's not a person.
And there's one reporter who kind of comments on that. Like, is she shrinking because she's, a lowly housewife and no one's paying attention to her anyway? Kind of commentary.
Yeah. Yeah. And also like there's and that Roger Ebert quote talked about powerlessness, and he compared it to being a kid and being a teenager, not having any power. But I feel like watching this, the scary thing is that none of us have any power. And I don't think it's about necessarily being a kid. Like, I wouldn't watch that movie and be like, yeah, kids are powerless. That's why this is a children's movie and children will connect with it. It's more like you said, most of us are powerless. There's a small group of people who have power. Most of us are just kind of out there. There's chemicals in the world that are going to kill you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Oh God, I have to go lay down.
Heavy movie.
It is. It's a lot to take home.
It's a lot to take home. And then let's throw in some other Lily Tomlin characters for
very randomly and sparsely. Like there was this one character that was in the whole movie that was basically just Lily Tomlin as a little bit older lady.
Little bit older, like she reminded me of the church lady, which made me think like, oh, I wonder if like Dana Carvey,
I don't know,
was inspired by this. Yeah, definitely.
But then also became an activist once this happened.
Pat Kramer to the supermarket with her little legs.
The visuals in this movie. I mean, I can't even tell you how poorly those visuals were done where she was small and things were big. I was like, is that the size of things?
Right. Well, I thought that too. I was like, whoever did this, I don't feel like somebody today, if this movie was made,
they would
like
have done a lot of math.
There's a lot of math that goes into it. And it's like, okay, if they're this big, then this thing is going to be this big.
Right.
And there's some kind of math. That math was not done in this movie.
No.
It was just like
the dinner plates.
Big.
Like the dinner plates were not that big.
Right.
When, I don't know. I just feel like it was very off scale.
It was. I feel like they got some like prop designers and they were like, all right, you make a big plate and you over here, you make a box that's going to be the stuff for her to go into.
And
like none of it made sense.
I think that's how presumably it was couched as a kid's movie, because you had these props that were kind of humorous. Like she's drinking out of a thimble. She lives in the dollhouse, the Barbie house. She wears the Barbie clothes.
Right.
And then she's buried when they think she dies. She's buried in a matchbox.
That part when she's in the garbage disposal, a few things about that, because that played heavy into young Emily's mind. Very scary. So she falls into a garbage disposal, and she's probably about the size of like a Barbie doll, maybe a little bit smaller than a Barbie doll. She falls into the garbage disposal, and Concepcion, who's gotten swept up in all the Hollywoodness of this now, because Pat Kramer's now famous for being a shrinking woman. So obviously Concepcion, who starts out this kind of like very meek, very hair's pulled back, always very conservatively dressed. Her hair's all down. She's got the tight pants on.
From Greece.
She's all Sandy from Greece, dancing around the kitchen, and with a flower in her hair, smoking a cigarette.
Yes.
And so Pat Kramer falls into the garbage disposal. Now, we did not have a garbage disposal growing up, so I did not understand what it was necessarily, but it was still very scary.
I still don't think you understand what it is, because at a point you were like, wouldn't they just find her in it? But it all goes away. Like the food,
there would be nothing left of her.
No, it shreds it up into little pieces and then it goes out to sea.
I think you understand how it works.
I don't understand how plumbing works. I understand how garbage disposals work.
They're the top level of things. You're not going under there, figuring out where the water goes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but that part was very, very scary to me. And then all of a sudden, the scary people come in. I guess it's implied that they find her and they steal her away. And then next thing you know, she's in a cage in a lab testing place with monkeys.
Which I also felt like they were just like, what else we should throw in here?
Well, this movie had it.
We're against animal testing. So they were just like, let's put it in. Let's just put it in.
Yeah. Well, I wrote down here, I'm like, is this movie funny? Is it a comedy? Drama? What the fuck is it? There's so many things happening because, like, we have these weird Lily Tomlin characters. We have this big social commentary going on throughout it.
But I think, too,
and it's a commentary on advertising, on science, on, we're taking the world down. Consumerism. We're taking it all down with this one little lady.
Yeah, and I think to say, you said about the Lily Tomlin characters, there's three. There's Pat, the shrinking woman.
Mm-hmm.
There's the older lady that's the friend or whatever. And then they show her like one time as an operator.
And that was like a famous Lily Tomlin character.
But that was it.
But I think from reading the other things, there was a scene in the theatrical version where she was the little girl that she played. That was like a famous character that she used to play, but they cut it out of like later things. But even still, it was like this was her vehicle. And she's like a very Lily Tomlin's very funny,
but
she's not funny in this movie.
Think about the way like Eddie Murphy is in his movie. He's like all of these characters. Like it almost didn't make sense that she was more than one character because she wasn't enough characters.
Right. It was just like a couple, and then they weren't like to
well
me, they weren't well thought out. And I feel like if this was like a vehicle for Lily Tomlin, it's not showcasing how funny she is, and like anything like that.
No, and it definitely her main role is Pat. Who wasn't a necessarily likable character. It was just a very bland character.
I know, she's like calling her husband at the office because she thinks her nails look small. Yeah. It's like, this is the emergency? Like, come on, lady.
Well, and, looking ahead, they were getting smaller.
They were, but I feel like, okay, there's some other things I want to talk about. Okay, no, you go.
No, I just want to talk about, too, the real focus by the husband when she starts getting smaller is how he's going to have sex with her.
Well, I was just going to talk about sex because sex is a big thing in this movie. In the beginning, with that perfume that falls on her, it's a new perfume that he's trying to think of a name of, and he's like, oh, we could call it like, I don't know, like something like Odyssey, or we could call it this. And she's like, I know, Sex Pot. Which is the worst name for a perfume ever. And everyone's like, that's the best name for a perfume ever.
Sex Panther is a way better name.
But I guess maybe that's what's supposed to be funny with this. But it's played like Charles Grodin is like, that's his humor. He's very dry.
Straight man. Yeah.
Straight man. This, he does that as well throughout, but it's like not played against anything funny.
He's underutilized.
Yeah. So's Lily Tomlin. Yeah. And it's her movie.
For sure.
Yeah. Like, I feel like, is this the movie that was I don't know. It was but yeah, you had the Sex Pot perfume. They're like, the kids are like, oh, I think they're having sex.
Oh yeah, it's super weird in the beginning because the kids sneak out of bed to listen at the door of their parents' room, and they give each other this knowing look, like, oh, they're doing it again.
Yeah, and then like when she starts getting small, she gets like this very like, oh no, I can't please my husband. Like they don't come out and say that, but that's kind of implied.
Well, he's reading a book that's called How to Live in a Marriage Without Sex. She's just...
And he just has it. Like, he's reading it in front of his kids. Like,
very clearly went to the bookstore while this trauma was happening to purchase this book.
Right? And also, it looks like a Webster's Dictionary, except it's pink.
Uh-huh.
Props, though, to the husband, because, as all this is going on, Concepcion is getting markedly hotter. Yeah. And he's, like, not even giving her a second chance.
Yeah, I definitely thought that was going to be a storyline.
They go out of the way to be like, he's not even really... It's not even like a plot point, but I enjoyed that fact because I was like, oh, that's probably wouldn't be the case in the real world.
But then when she's super tiny at the size, like the Barbie doll size, let's say.
Yes, because she's wearing like Barbie size clothes.
Yeah, he gives her a present, which is like a sexy nightie type thing, or meant to be a sexy nightie thing. And she tries to go. She feels all bad.
Yes,
once again, because she's not pleasing him. So she like tries to climb into the bed. And you're just like, well, what's going to happen? Like, no.
Well, you know what, though? Do you know that that's like a whole porn thing?
Oh.
But I know. Why do I know that? I don't know. I know things, Kim. I'm not going to say how I know things, but I've never watched that kind of porn. I just want to put that out there in case, for anyone who's listening. But I do think that is...
Like a big man, little woman?
Well, I think the reverse is more the thing. Big woman, little man.
Oh.
Yeah, let's not.
The mechanic.
Stop.
Okay.
Stop. Oh, I did write giant porn because I did want to talk about it. Don't look it up. Don't you ever look it up. It's just don't.
Hashtag giant porn.
So a couple of other things I wanted to touch on here.
Okay.
There's a scene in this. So when they're going through this whole thing of her getting smaller and kind of her life, which becomes more and more terrifying. Like they have a dog, they have to get rid of the dog because the dog is chasing her. She's trying to yell at her kids. Her kids, like even like a neighbor kid has just like, it's not this, but it's kind of akin to like a Nerf dart gun.
Yes.
And it's like, oh no, like you could kill my mom with this thing. She's like, the kids won't listen to her. She gets like this big, huge robot that's just like a little robot toy, backs her into this closet full of giant toys that are obviously people-ish.
Yeah.
Costumes. There's like a bunny rabbit,
playing the drums.
but it's like this is the stuff of nightmares. Is like this weird bunny playing the drums, and there's this huge baby doll who's like, Betsy Wetsy, and it just happens to be that Lily's right between his legs and a stream of pee. Like this movie's insane.
But like, and you would think maybe that's funny. It's not funny. It's not funny.
It's not funny. It's not fun or funny.
No. Like you're just like, oh God, something just peed on her.
I know. And she's like she's struggling and all this.
Well, that's the thing too. I think that you had mentioned this while we were watching it. Like she struggles so much and no one helps her. They just sit and watch her struggle.
So one of the things that I had found out from researching this is that in Charles Grodin's biography that he wrote, he talked about this movie, which now I really want to get that biography.
Sure.
And he said how his mom was really mad at him. Like that was her big takeaway from this movie was like, you never helped your wife at all, like throughout this movie. And he's like, well, I couldn't because if I did, then you would see that the plates were really big. And it was like, so you always see that she's struggling over here being a small person. And then over in the distance are her family and husband who are just kind of like staring at her while she pulls giant sheets of bacon. That's dangerous too.
I know.
There's like a sizzle plate and she's dragging strips of bacon onto the sizzle plate. And I'm like, oh my God, she's going to burn herself and die.
Yeah, like they still try, like they presumably she still has to do all the housework.
Well, she says that she wants to. So I feel like that because she's like, no, like I still want to be able to contribute and I don't want to be treated as, I don't know. I think that's kind of like her.
Okay.
I don't feel like she was being made to do it. I feel like she was putting it upon herself. Okay. But I also think that that's a commentary on like the housewife or whatever, just like putting all this stuff upon themselves so that her husband can go off and, you know, be the breadwinner and everything else. I also feel like, I mean, as I said before in this movie, her, you know, her partner that she was with forever and who she ends up being married to in real life, Lily Tomlin's partner, Jane Wagner, wrote this movie as a vehicle for Lily Tomlin. So it's like, you got to imagine as writing partners, they were really into this, putting this together, which is interesting because they're lesbians writing this story about the struggles of being like a housewife.
Right.
And like maybe and I think there is that feminist thing of like the shrinking voice of women and no one's paying attention to her and she's small. But I feel like that is so drowned out by all of these other messages of like the sinister corporation and it's not, you know what I mean? Like there's so many things.
Well, I also think too, like towards the end of the movie, the gorilla that she was in the animal shelter with
it's not an animal shelter.
Not an animal shelter.
It's a lab.
Animals, whatever, the testing lab.
It's not a kind shelter.
No.
It's a scary one with lots of different kinds of primates.
But there's a large gorilla that they've become friends, and then he just becomes like a character in the movie with more facial expressions than most of the other actors and actresses.
Oh my gosh. Well, let me tell you about that girl.
Yes, interesting. I need to know how it was done.
Creature creator Rick Baker.
Okay.
The famous Rick Baker, who has done like he did American Werewolf in London, all the like those kind of things that like practical effects, makeup. He's like the granddaddy of them all. So he designed that, and then he ended up wearing it and being the actor who did the whole thing. And it was pretty
well done.
It was well done.
Considering how poorly the shrinking factor was done. The gorilla was well.
Good job, Rick Baker. There's a reason why you are the legend that you are. Right. That gorilla was really quite impressive. So, and that acting when he's like all in the elevator shaft and all these things. If you're listening to this and you've never seen this movie, you're probably like, what is this movie? Yeah. I urge you. Rent this movie and watch it, just because obviously no one else watched this except for me and my family.
And now me, sadly.
You should definitely watch this movie.
If you want to watch a movie, a well-done movie about shrinking, I would like to bring back Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and just say, much better movie.
Well, Inner Space.
Yeah.
I loved Inner Space, too. Right.
There are better movies that take.
Well, then they have like the Ant-Man, which is like also a shrinking guy.
Yes.
But yeah, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, but a lot in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like how many more, except for Ant-Man, which let's put that aside because that's like Marvel universe over here.
And likely it was a character that existed.
It did. Yeah. Like nobody made up Ant-Man. They brought it back for some reason and made him an Avenger.
Wasn't there like something about the 100-foot woman or something too? There was a lot of size play happening.
Obviously people are into it. Another tale as old as time, apparently. Lots of guys thinking about this this kind of stuff. So interesting. I mean, I feel like it wanted to be like, let's go back to the original thing. Like, definitely wanted to be controversial.
Yes.
Maybe was another thing that, because we have been noting this, because I think that there is an important focus on equity in today's films. I don't think there was one black person, or except for Concepcion and her family, who is momentarily in the movie. There's no
people of color
at all in this movie, right. And I think it's.
And there's a woman in the evil corporation. They're creating that world shrink plan. There's a woman who sits at the table, but she never says anything. And then there's a doctor,
Dr. Ruth. She's kind of creepy and scary. She gives me
but she doesn't have much power either.
She doesn't have much power. No, not at all. But it's, I think I go back to the fact that, like I said, without having seen it in many, many, many years, like I really believe I was most likely a child the last time I saw this movie. Mm-hmm. When I was thinking about it a lot over the past week, as I said, this movie affected me greatly. Like I thought about this movie a lot, and watching it now, it's like, oh, this wasn't like some fun.
But it's not like you thought about kind of movie. But you didn't think about it in the way they wanted you to think about it either. No. It's not like you were just like, oh gosh, capitalism. Well, what am I going to do?
I did about the helplessness factor of things, where it was kind of like a little scary, and I didn't like that. And I think watching it, I was remembering being like scared about your mom just suddenly, like their mom just suddenly goes away
in front of their faces,
and she can't help them anymore. And I think you look at your parents as people who can like help you and protect you, and this mom can't do that for her kids, her little bratty kids
with weird haircuts.
And they always have some kind of prank thing going on. Yeah. Gotta love those kids.
But yeah, anyway, I don't know.
What do you think about it? Are you glad that I made you watch it?
Glad. I mean, I'm glad it exists because I just think it's amazing, and I just think about too, like at the time that this was made, there was just so much being made that this was just another thing in a long line of things.
Yeah, but I also think it's interesting that this was, like, as I said, this movie was roundly panned back when it came out.
I mean, they were right.
They were right to pan this movie, but also like not what it was portrayed as.
No,
it's not a comedy. It's not a, like, I don't know what it is, but it is. It is. Yeah. Well, you know what? That's kind of interesting too. Like, there aren't a lot of movies, at least from that time period, that don't fall into a very specific bucket. Right. And I feel like this movie definitely doesn't fall into a specific bucket. And maybe they were trying to have it fall into like one. I don't know. But it's a very interesting movie. 1981 classic. Incredible Shrinking Woman. Check it out, or don't. Just listen to our podcast and you make the call.
Yeah.
I don't know if I don't know if you guys can handle it.
Better things to watch.
I don't know. It's pretty great.
Honestly.
It's pretty great. Watch The Great Muppet Caper or Clifford and fully experience
Clifford.
What do you think, Beethoven?
He's in Clifford?
He's in Clifford with like Martin Short when Martin Short's like plays a little kid, which is also a really weird movie.
And he's in Beethoven. He's in 2 Big Dog movies.
Clifford isn't a dog in the Clifford movie. It's a boy.
Oh.
It's a boy, but he's not really a boy. He's Martin Short pretending to be a boy.
Yeah. Okay. Don't add that one to your list. That sounds terrible.
Well, okay. So I did go back and try and do the James Spader connection with this movie.
I was wondering. I was thinking about this as we were wrapping up. But I would like to hear the...
This was difficult. I had a really hard time.
I feel like you'd have to go through the doctor.
And I didn't go through the doctor.
Okay.
I didn't. Well, I went with Charles Grodin.
Okay.
Because I felt like he was in a lot of things. So Charles Grodin was in another great movie, Midnight Run, with Robert De Niro.
Okay.
That movie I watched that recently. That's a good movie. Watch that movie, people. Robert De Niro was in Raging Bull.
Yes.
With Kathy Moriarty.
Okay.
Okay. Kathy Moriarty was in Soap Dish. Do you remember that
Yes.
movie? I love that movie.
Yeah, me too.
With Robert Downey Jr.
Yes.
Robert Downey Jr. was in Less Than Zero with James Spader.
There you go.
There it is.
It all comes
I think I
back
did
to
another one
Spader.
with late connecting through Robert Downey Jr., but with Avengers, because James Spader voices like a robot.
Oh.
So this,
I thought you were going to go for the Hanks connection.
Oh, the Hanks connection.
Via the Burbs.
Okay. Well, we're going to put that one to the side because there's probably Tom Hanks was in a lot of 80s movies, and I'm going to have to think that we're going to touch upon at least a couple of few weird. We got to get into the Hanks of it all. So while this is our 7th episode, something like that.
Yeah,
we're into it. We've been into it. We just released this in real life.
Yes.
So that's kind of like a time warp for anybody listening. But in our world, in the real world where we live, not the world where you live, we just launched our podcast just a few days ago. And I did listen to it, which was fun because it was just like hanging out with you. And I like hanging out with you. So that was a good time.
Fun.
But in those early ones, I did like a little quote at the end, like a positive thing.
The first one you did, yes.
I did. And I gotta say, I kind of enjoyed it in that episode.
I didn't.
You did?
No, say your quote. It's fine. Well, it's schmaltzy. Don't you think?
Yeah, but I think I'm a little schmaltzy.
You are. Go ahead. Just do it.
All right, so this is from my positivity jar that I have at my house that has little things that say in there. I got it from you. I wanted it like an event that you were putting on.
Well, you're welcome.
All right. Well, here's what the positivity for the day is.
Okay.
I manifest everything I deserve. Oh, think about it, people. And Pat Kramer, you're small, but you manifest everything you deserve. And you deserve to be a small little shrinking lady. I don't know.
She deserved.
I don't know. Let's not talk about it anymore.
Okay. So we're going to wrap it up. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram. We're at Confidently Controversial on Instagram. We definitely, after an episode airs, we'll put up some stuff, some pictures, so you can get an idea of what these movies look like. And be sure to follow us there and tell us what you think.
Yes, definitely tell us what you think. And thank you so much for listening. And thank you, Kim, for being on a podcast with me and for watching a stupid movie from my youth, that the window into my life now.
Thank you, Emily. It's been real.
All right, everyone. Just remember, be confident always,
but never controversial.
Try not to be. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. All right. Well, we love you guys. All right. Bye.
Confidently controversial.